Hello, friends, folks, and fellow countrymen. This is your homegrown Benjamin Boyce speaking into a microphone on the day after the election. I know that there's such a thing as a election eve because that's pretty obvious that that's before the election. But what happens after the election? Is there a special day? I, like you, perhaps, are wallowing through some sort of dopamine hangover from last night.
I'm jacked. I'm jacked to the tits!
What?
There was a lot of fun I had on Twitter, banging my ideas against people watching the results come in. The results are not completely in, and I'm not going to comment on why that is or in what direction that's shaping. It does feel fishy to me. Hopefully we have a clear leader, winner. Yeah, clear leader. But I think that by design or happenstance, the way that this is going to fall out will destabilize a lot of our attitude toward whoever ends up in office. That aside, I wanted to speak to you about the scintillating thread of one Charles M. Blow, who is a New York Times columnist and author of #TheDevilYouKnow. You can set up bookings for him to come to your country fair through wmespeakers.com/speakers/Charles Blow. He also has an Instagram. I looked at it, wasn't too interesting to me. He's got a really cool beard, though. However, let's get to the meat of the matter. He is a writer, and I have in the past fashioned myself one too, so let's get into his words. Charles M. Blow writes, "This is so personally devastating to me. The black male vote for Trump increased from 13% in 2016 to 18% this year. The black female vote for Trump doubled from 4% in 2016 to 8% this year." What could that mean? Well, let's see why Charles Blow is so personally devastated by these numbers. Oh, he makes a side note. Also, once again, exit polls show a majority of white women voting for Trump. Important note, Pew analysis of actual votes in 2016 showed that it wasn't a majority, but it was a plurality of white women voting for Trump. Also, the percentage of LGBT voting for Trump doubled from 2016. Capital D, capital O, U, B, L, E, D, doubled! Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. This is why LGBT, people of color, don't really trust the white gaze. Yes, I said what I said, period. So, according to Charles M. Blow, that these groups are the numbers for the Republican candidate for the president of the United States are doubling. It means something to him, something very troubling. And when he says that LGBT people don't really trust white gays anymore, I think he thinks in terms of demographics. I think his religion is formed, or his morality at least is informed quite heavily by demographics. Listen to this. Also, the percentage of Latinos and Asians voting for Trump increased, and that's capitalized, from 2016, according to exit polls. Yet, more evidence that we can't depend on the, quote, browning of America, end quote, to dismantle white supremacy and erase anti-blackness. So, that's the end of the thread, but this is something that's going to happen. This is something that happened in the wake of Trump getting elected. People were like, white supremacy is alive and well in our country and anti-blackness, right? And they were blaming the white folk for doing that. But now that the demographics are shifting to show that these other categories aren't necessarily supporting the Democrat Party, according to people like Charles M. Blow, and he's not the only one, that can only signal that the dismantling of white supremacy and the erasure of anti-blackness have halted in the tracks. I find that way of thinking terribly dated. It had its day in the sun. The first, whether or not it's the last, but the first Trump administration gave us plenty of this bullshit of people blaming everything on race. And actually, there was an article that came out that showed that white men were the only demographic to decrease in their support of Donald Trump. White men, the ones who have been consistently ridiculed and shamed openly online, and I'm not saying that as a white man being defensive, I'm just saying if you actually look at what happens online, white men are the ones who you can openly malign. You can openly malign, and it's been that way for years, specifically, especially over the last 4 years. So it appears that that ridicule and that mockery and that open discrimination, that racialized disdain for the white man did work in the white man's favor, but somehow it boosted everybody else up towards supporting the Republican candidate. Now, I think on one level of analysis, it's not particularly prudent to reduce a vote to any sort of like grand narrative, which is what these people are doing. But you can see that that narrative itself isn't panning out. You can see that this identity politic that's formulated on the oppressive white supremacist class, or just white supremacy in general, meaning everything that they want it to be, oppressing all these other groups, isn't really working because those groups are saying, oh, you're selling us this bullshit. And we know if we get on board of this, we know what's going to happen. We know how you treat people who step out of line. And what are you actually promising us other than some sort of moral superiority over white folk? We actually want material gain. I think that's what's happening. A lot of the groups that were voting Democrat had thought that they were going to get material gain out of the Democrats. Turned out to be a bunch of moral grandstanding bullshit and more taxes and a lot of these different programs that the Democratic elite bequeaths in ways that if you look at the West Coast, if you look at LA, if you look at San Francisco, if you look at Seattle, and if you look at Portland, if you see these hyper Democrat places, all these social programs, a lot of community spirit, maybe even like more socialism than other places, how they get infested with, one, homeless people aren't really taken care of that well. The middle class is incredibly squeezed by all those taxes. The elite come in and they figure out ways to get out of those taxes. And then you have these rioters roaming the streets, pissing everybody off and playing this ultimate game. Like the riots that we saw over the summer are the manifestation of Charles M. Blow's identity politic. There's a direct line between shouting out all this rhetoric about dismantling white supremacy and erasing anti-blackness and the protests that we saw, and the unhingedness of the protests we saw, the unhingedness in and of itself. So it looks to be the case that one large loser we can call, tentatively, is identity politic. And by saying that identity politic is losing doesn't mean that people won't stop playing the identity politic. These people have erected entire personalities and careers out of playing this grievance game. They're not going to give that up, but their support is going to erode. Their facade of moral superiority and anti-bigotry and the erasure of all that stuff. Sorry, bad wordplay, but they're the media's front of being the arbiters of our morality and the ones who are on the right side of history is eroding in the fact that people aren't buying into it. And that will be evinced in the polls, which are a big mess right now. So I just wanted to pipe in with something election related, because I know you guys are probably just wanting a soothing voice talking about something that you can agree with. Hopefully you agreed with me. If you didn't, I would like to hear your articulation of that. I will continue to talk. I think I have more to do to process what happened last night, but for right now, we'll end this video. Hope you guys are good. Talk to you soon. Bye.